again. I am here with my sister, Emily Guy Birkin. She does not use a hyphen.
And I am here with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and she does use a hyphen.
And together, this show is Lightbringers, where we illuminate the deeper meaning of the crime-solving devil TV show. And yes, we are overthinking it. So today we're going to talk about episodes 106 and 107, Favorite Son and Wingman.
Yes.
You want to get us started?
Sure. So can I start with something completely fluffy?
Of course.
And it's actually fluffy in both literal and figurative sense. I noticed in Favorite Son when Lucifer calls Amenadiel to the beach, his hair gets super curly in the
humidity. Oh, I can relate. I noticed it.
And that was something my first binge watch through I did not notice, but upon a rewatch I'm just like, oh look, the poor hairstyle.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, look, they brushed out the curls. He gets that big puffy.
Yes. Yeah. And the hairstylist was just like, there's nothing we can do.
I am familiar with that. You just need a lot of that curl enhancing product, but they don't give him curly hair. Yeah, it's tough when your actor has different hair texture than your character.
So, and that was something that I was just, I do not have the curl, but I am married to someone with the curl and grew up with someone with the curl. And I was feeling for the hairdresser.
Yeah.
On set.
I actually noticed the curls the curls they tried to brush out of his hair in both of those episodes as well. That's funny.
Yes. So that was my little fluffy thing. So there are a couple of things that I wanted to, one other little fluffy thing is this is the first time we see Lucifer sing, is in Favorite Son, singing Sinner Man by Nina Simone, which was an excellent choice. And if people who are watching us talk about this probably already know this, but the fact that Lucifer was not supposed to sing, but Joe and Ildy, the showrunners, heard him sing at when they had a cast karaoke, and they're like, "Holy cow, you can sing! Great!
Boy, can he!
Oh, he can. He really can."
Yeah.
So, and that actually, I feel like in some ways this is where the show gets its stride, because I mean some of it is like we have things that become integral parts of his character, like the singing in this, but it takes a break from the straight procedural and we get into the celestial stuff in these two episodes. We actually start seeing that there's more than just the human world. Which there were hints of it, but definitely kept them separate up until this point.
Yeah, I think there also is something about the way, especially that scene where he's singing and at the same time the murder and theft is happening, which we learn later in the episode is theft of actually his angel wings that he had made sever, and the fact that he's completely unaware. I think that like sets up, because it could go several ways. I think that different conceptions of Lucifer, I think even in the comic book, though I didn't read it, I've only read about it, suggests that he has some of the kind of higher sense of like, not omniscience but something in that direction. But this makes it clear that there is none of that. Like though they are his wings, like once they were severed, like he actually doesn't have kind of a connection to know that there's something going on around them. So I think that's also kind of an interesting, starting to build up the boundaries of his power subtly. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I also like, one of the things about Favorite Son is that now that we're invested in him, that we watched already 5 episodes. Now that we as an audience are invested in him, like he's kind of a dick in this episode in
Really
ways
is.
that he hadn't been. I mean, he was kind of flippant in earlier episodes, but like when he shows up and he's like boring, like in the presence of the dead body, and Chloe's like, what? You know, like and he just is much more of a jerk in this episode than he has been before. And I think actually even than he is going forward. Like it's one of those things, like how much jerkiness are we willing to accept from him? I think this episode kind of tests that a little bit.
I do wonder if some of the jerkiness is a vestige of his comic book persona, because that Lucifer's kind of a sociopath.
Yeah, yes, that is my impression from everything I've read about that Lucifer. Total anti-hero. Which I think our Lucifer as Tom Ellis is an anti-hero, but he's an anti-hero on a redemptive path. I mean, that is the ultimate arc, is a path of redemption. I don't think the Lucifer of the Gaiman comic had any kind of redemption arc. He just was a sociopath.
Yeah. The one issue that I read, he same thing with no lying, never lies, but he obscures the truth without lying. And again, that's what our Tom Ellis Lucifer does, but with much higher stakes for the person to whom he is speaking. So he obscures the truth with Chloe when he says like it was Russian dolls, and like he clearly put the Russian dolls in there, so if he was pressed, he could tell the truth. But it doesn't matter, like it matters to her because she's like, what criminal enterprise are you involved in? But like ultimately, it's not anything that she needs to worry about or is going to affect her life.
Right.
Whereas in the issue that I read, it was a lie that ended up with this person being like a damned soul. And it was just like that no, that's not okay. And that's when I decided, like, I don't think I'm into the comic book Lucifer. So and that's something that's interesting as you continue along the series. He starts to learn the limits of his, like, well, I'm telling the truth technically, no lie sensibility, and how that can be weaselly. And he grapples with that, which is something that I don't think the Neil Gaiman might carry being the main writer for the comic book necessarily grapples with. Yeah.
So that was an interesting point for me. Both actually, Lucifer being a jerk and also like Amenadiel being someone that we cannot trust. That is, I mean, we've already seen him as an adversarial character for sure, but the level that we can't trust him, especially given the second episode that we're talking about, given Wingman, when he comes and is supposedly assisting Lucifer in retrieving the wings, and then we find out that it was he who arranged for them to be stolen in the first place, and the man died as a result. Like
two men died because
right.
the actual thief throws himself off the
right
building.
jumped off the building. Yeah.
And I was thinking the other thing that occurred to me, because and we talked a little bit about this before, when Lucifer gets so angry and he punches the wall in session with Linda, I was thinking about the amount of danger that Amenadiel was putting Linda in without care for it. Now he knows Lucifer, and Lucifer, we have never seen him show that kind of violence towards a woman in like,
we haven't seen him show toward a human who was not deserving of punishment in his eyes, but
his eyes. And even like when he has been intimidating towards women who are deserving of punishment. So I'm thinking of in Manly Whatnots, the girl who faked kidnapping. He is intimidating her in a physical way, but he's not using his fists, or do you know what I mean? He's not being violent. He's just saying like, oh, you chose wrong. And I like, I want to give Amenadiel the benefit of the doubt that he was like thinking like, oh, well, he's not gonna hurt her. But I don't know
I'm
if
not sure he
Amenadiel would
cares.
have cared.
I'm not sure he cares yet. I really, yeah. The way the character has been presented at this stage in the series, I'm not sure Amenadiel would care.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's interesting to me about these two episodes is I'm thinking about how easy it is to manipulate Lucifer. So when he finds out from Maze that the container has been stolen, and he's like, I'm not going to do anything about it. And she is just like, oh, okay, that's fine. I guess just people can steal from you now. No big deal. Doesn't bother you. Doesn't bother me. And it's just like, wow, he doesn't recognize that she's manipulating him when he hates being manipulated.
Yeah.
It has gotten me thinking about the fact that he consistently says he hates being manipulated. And I think in some of it is because he's easily
manipulated. Yeah. Yeah. And that actually, when we think about the character throughout the whole arc of the series, then it starts to actually, when we meet Uriel, when we meet Michael, and there's like kind of implication that each of those brothers has manipulated him in the past. Michael suggests that he has manipulated Lucifer actually to the rebellion way back in the beginning of time. It because of all of this character building that we've seen, it actually is believable that he would have been manipulated into that. Because he is so easily manipulated. One of the other really big things that is introduced here, that when you and I talked about it offline, I was feeling like the showrunners were maybe inconsistent about it, but now I've come to an explanation that I feel satisfied with, so I want to share, which is the wings. Yes. And the effect of the wings on humanity. Like both Amenadiel and Lucifer are like, humanity cannot interact with the wings because they are a sign of divinity. And like the atheist auctioneer guy, like, I can't live without them, and the thief who jumps off a.
I have to say, like, with thinking back on this Wingman, that episode with Carmen Grant is the name of the atheist auctioneer.
Yeah.
The thing that I remember is the look on his face as he's laying there staring at them, and just
sheer ecstasy.
It's just amazing. Like that actor is just really good.
He nailed it. He nailed it.
Well, and he nailed the smarmy, like, don't believe in or care about anything auctioneer as well. So you were saying, I didn't want to.
Well, so in the broader arc, like, it bothered me that then once they grow back, because he self-actualizes and he starts cutting them off, and like Amenadiel's like burning them in dumpsters. Or later in, is it season 4 with Pierce, with that amazing scene, it's season 3, with that amazing green screen scene where Tom Ellis is cradling Lauren German and like shielding her with the wings. Like, I remember watching that and being like, why even bad guys, right, are not going to shoot at a freaking angel. And I realized, and this is actually, I think you and I talked about Adam from season 6 that made me kind of realize this. The original wings, the first set of wings that were cut off, were literally made by God's hand. But then the replacement wings, like the wings that grow back, were self-actualized by Lucifer's cosmic stuff, not by God directly. And so while they remain celestial,
and they happened on Earth.
Yeah, true. And they were made on Earth. And so though they remain celestial, they are not like the first set actually directly from God. And so that difference is enough for me. I still don't know that, like, even like dyed in the wool, psychopath, like never done a good thing in your life, would shoot at a literal angel. I'm still not so sure about that, but at least it I can make sense of that. It's not like driving them insane for having seen divinity. So I wanted, like, that was a little like insight overthinking it moment that I wanted to share with you and our audience.
Yeah. That makes sense. So there's a like a front and back, like a parentheses in these two episodes between Lucifer and Maze. It's a little thing in the beginning of Favorite Son, where she brings the Britneys. He's like, sorry, gotta go to work. And he says to the Britneys, make my friend feel better. And I was thinking, like, that's the first time he's referred to her as his friend. And there's, you know, it's one of those like, make my friend feel better, but it's just, there seems to be something like a little bit more there just in the way he delivers the line. And then at the end of Wingman, he and Maze have a conversation where he says, like, I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know this isn't what you bargained for, but, and she goes, but nothing. And it's something that I thought was really interesting and important, and kind of undercuts a little bit. Well, not undercuts, like later on when she ends up betraying him. It shows what the betrayal is, you know, that there is a real friendship there. But you so rarely see Lucifer acknowledge who she is to him and what she does for him, rather than it just being like, you're just a demon. And so I thought that was interesting, like little character moments that kind of bookended these two episodes that were interesting. There was one other thing that I mentioned it earlier, and I just want to mention it here, and I'm not sure. So when Chloe meets Amenadiel and she's surprised, and like, I was trying to think, like, okay, are they trying to be quote unquote realistic because people would be surprised? And she is very clearly like polite about it, and she's like, oh, I didn't expect your brother to be so handsome, and you know, like covers it, which is probably truly what people would do. On the other hand, why is it got to be a surprise? You know, like, he's his brother.
Yeah, but it would be. I mean, that's the reality of the way that race is perceived in American culture.
Yeah. It's, I guess I wish it wasn't every single person, although they do get better along. Like there comes a time where like when Trixie meets Amenadiel and says he's Lucifer's brother, she just accepts it.
Yeah.
And further on it's, but there's at least one or two like really moments. And again, it's realistic, but do we need to have it? Is it necessary? Yeah. I wish we didn't have to have that, because it's just like, who cares? They're brothers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, the difference is real. Like, even if it were just, you know, Tom Ellis, and if it were Tom Ellis and Amenadiel were played more like the way he was drawn in the comic and looked like Legolas, the you know, elven archer with like long blonde hair or something, there still would be like a there is not a resemblance. And there is, I mean, look at us. We have Facebook friends who are like, wait, which is which? Like, there's a resemblance because
I don't even feel like we look that much alike. I know we do, but
I mean, like, and there is a, you know, and I mean, that casting directors get a lot of money in order to like find people, like the woman they have playing Rory, you know, like, what good casting if we're trying to find someone who, you know, displays a phenotype that has aspects of both of the phenotypes of their supposed parents.
Yeah.
So like, yes. And like, I mean, I think that I actually think that it was handled in an appropriate way, because there was surprise, but it wasn't like, you know, how could you
Immediately go different fathers or anything like that.
say, like, you know, like there's no way you could have a black man as a brother. You know what I mean? Like there was no negative judgment.
Mhm.
It was a surprise, and then it
did kind of model a way to graciously cover your surprise by like, oh, I never would have expected you to have such a handsome brother.
Yeah.
And Amenadiel does look incredibly handsome.
He really does.
I mean, love that suit.
DB Woodside supports that suit really well.
God, yeah. I'm like, yeah, of course you missed the dress, because he is wearing the hell out of that suit.
Yeah. I think there's like, this is okay. So I'm gonna overthink it a little bit.
Please.
I think there is an intercultural phase where we sort of minimize difference and we focus on what's the same. But actually, like, when we minimize difference, we also kind of we can erase the consequences of difference. And so I'm not sure that I would want the characters to just be like, oh yeah, you're brothers, of course you are. I see that, because I think that would actually erase, which the show actually gets into the reality of the difference of race later, not so far, and I think that's an important step, you know, so that we're not like, we don't need to pretend that Tom Ellis and DB Woodside look as though they came from the same biological parents. We don't need to pretend that.
Yeah.
In order to kind of write and experience a believable and useful and even anti-oppression show, you know?
I guess part of what I'm reacting to is something that doesn't happen, because these are characters being played by actors. But I'm thinking about actual brothers, where one is white and one is black, and the microaggression of constantly having people be surprised. And I'm thinking of when I meet Jews of color who have to deal with the constant, oh, you're Jewish, kind of surprise. And I guess that's what I'm responding to, is more that how frustrating that would be for the people who are in that position, rather than the specifics of how it's handled in the show. I guess it's more that, well, and again, here's me overthinking it. Like, offline, we've talked a little bit about how much women are not necessarily taken at their word, and how important it is to just take people at their word. And like, you know, for Lucifer to introduce Amenadiel as my brother, and just have it be like, okay, nice to meet you, Amenadiel. Like, and for someone, you know, a Jew of color, to say Shabbat Shalom, and instead of people go like, wait, how do you know that? You know, like, or start asking like, can you sing the Shema? Because I don't believe you. You know, right. Like that's where it's coming from, more so than the actual what I'm seeing on the screen.
Right. And okay, so within that framing, then I think I will say that I think that the showrunner had Chloe Decker behave appropriately, in that she didn't say how.
Yeah.
She didn't say, how are you Jewish? She didn't say, how are you brothers? Because that often is then like that Jew of color has to credential themselves. And the white Jew feels entitled to ask, how are you Jewish? Which, I mean, screw you. Like, don't ask. Just don't ask like that.
Don't ask.
Anyway, and to the show's credit, Chloe doesn't say that. She doesn't say, how are you brothers? She doesn't even assume how they are brothers. She doesn't say, oh, different brothers.
Yeah.
She just says, oh, I didn't expect him to be so handsome, you know? So
Which is, again, a gracious way of covering that momentary surprise.
Right. Which, I mean, because we are acculturated to expect siblings like you and me, you're below me in my screen, to have facial resemblance.
Yeah.
And so when you meet two people and you don't assume that they are related and you find out they are, you know, there is no shame in being surprised. It's what happens next.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And so, you know, I mean, I think that because even, you know, if I meet not in shul, a Jew of color out on the street, and they somehow make known their Jewishness, like my response is often, oh, I didn't realize we were related. I didn't realize we were mishpacha, which is family in Yiddish. So like acknowledging that you didn't know and now you do, that doesn't feel like a
that's fair. That's fair, I guess. And it's one of those where I want to keep an eye on this, like as we keep watching and see when there are other times where people are surprised. And some of this also comes from, for a little while, I was listening to a podcast where people were talking about Lucifer, and one of the podcasters was Black and was talking a little bit about some things that were frustrating to him, and he mentioned this as one of them, and I was like, I can see where that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's something like I'd like to keep an eye on. Now, speaking of Judaism, Samael,
which I just recently learned many Orthodox Jews will not even say that word because it's bad luck.
Really? Now, and it doesn't mean Lightbringer.
No.
It means something awful, doesn't it?
Yeah, it means like judgment of God or something. I had it up.
Scourge of God or something.
Scourge. Yeah. No, Lightbringer is actually the word Lucifer.
Yes.
Means Lightbringer, and that is a translation lowercase l from that thing in Isaiah that we talked about in an earlier episode. So no, the original name does not at all mean Lightbringer. No,
it did not connote God's love for Samael.
No, well, no, and I mean the host of angels all had their roles, right? And I think it's very clear. I'm not talking about the like earliest strata, but from later interpretations, it's very clear to me that all of the attributes of God are equally essential. And so God's judgment or deen, like the bit that would be the punisher in that constellation, is as important as the bit that would be merciful. So no, I don't, it doesn't necessarily connote, doesn't connote love, not from the name.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I bring that up is because that's what Amenadiel coached Linda to say to Lucifer. You know, you have another name, Samael, and that connotes God's love for you. And I was just like, no. Not that name.
But it does connote that insofar as the L part of all those names means God, it's you know, it's a scourge of God. So Michael is who is like God. You know, so they're all like Azrael, they're all, the L is God's self. And so in that sense, I think you could maybe make that argument.
As compared to a name Lucifer, which does not end in L.
Which has nothing to do with God.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could make that argument.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, that does, that idea that all aspects of God are essential, that gets back to like the whole arc of the show of what it is that Lucifer does. And I was thinking about this too, because I talked to you about like for the way season 6 ended. But I feel like the show ends up being in a lot of ways about the importance of meaningful work. And at the very beginning of Favorite Son, after he's been so rude about the dead security guard, And he's like, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year for 50 years. Like, this is why, if I wanted hell, I would have stayed in hell.
Right.
And yet the meaningful work that all of them find, every character finds work that is meaningful to them. I'm connecting that back to what you're saying. Every aspect of God is important because it's all meaningful things that need to be done.
It contributes to a whole, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that to me is I feel like just an important idea that we don't necessarily see. Lucifer, when he does things with intention, he's happier, and he has he was reacting throughout these 2 episodes because he's being manipulated. And it's when he realizes, I'm being manipulated. What do I want? I want to burn my wings. I want to make it abundantly clear, this is my home now. And that, I think, is also a really good and important message to be taking from, a primetime television show, is like, instead of simply reacting to the stimulus, stop, take a breath. What do you personally want? And one of the things that I actually find most, not moving, but I like that stays with me from these early seasons, is the image of the scars on his back. Because they are in some ways an image of spite. Like he literally cut something off his nose to spite his face. Literally did that. But there's also, like, when he burns the wings, it's more of a, like, this is freedom. This is me defining who I am. And the fact that there's these 2 meanings to something that's horrific. I mean, that's like, it's maiming yourself, basically, is really interesting to me. Like, to the point where, like, I've had daydreamed about getting like a tattoo of the scar.
Yeah. Thought about it too.
And I'm like, no. Buying a t-shirt is one thing, but
yeah.
But I find that really, really interesting, in it's, the redefining yourself with intention is so freeing in so many ways.
Yes. And I think there's an important component that he doesn't get, that the characters doesn't get for a while, which is that there also needs to be healing. I think that there's that piece is missing, which is why he keeps doing the same things over and over again, because he hasn't actually done any healing around it yet at this stage.
And that's one of the things that we've talked about, I think, offline. I don't think we've discussed it in one of the episodes, but one of the things I appreciate about the show is how well it handles mental health for the most part. Mostly. There's one thing that I'm still a little annoyed they never dealt with.
We'll get to it.
We'll get there. So that's actually like the advice that Linda does give him until she's being directed by Menadiel is quite good. She's talking about, like, you need to define yourself. You need to know who you are. And part of what you're struggling with right now is the fact that you don't know who you are. You're putting on these personas, but who's the real you? Which, as we keep watching, we find out, like, the why there's this connection with Chloe is because she can see him without the masks, without the persona. And so that's something that I feel like is really well done, and I really appreciate about the show is its focus on the importance of mental health and mental healing.
I'm going to close this out with one more thing that's fluffy, not literally fluffy.
So not his hair again.
No. In Wingman, when they're at the auction and they have the shackles that were meant to be St. Paul's, and they're like, yeah, Paul would never fit in those. Like he couldn't pass up dessert, which is a very funny moment. But I just don't believe that persecuted man in the ancient Middle East was fat. I just don't believe it. Like, right? Like, it's true that Saul, who became Paul, was, I think, affluent initially, but then he became this like crazy prophet for, for the Mashiach, the Messiah, who, or the man Jesus, who he thought was Messiah, and he was severely persecuted and kept in jail, and like, he was not fat by our standards. No way. I just don't believe it. I mean, all of the archaeological evidence is that human beings were smaller in every way 2,000 years ago. So I just
and even if he had been a stout man when he was wealthy, he would have, being in jail does not really do much for one's
and even if he were a stout man when he was wealthy, stout in 70 CE, like stout in the first century of this era, like, is not stout today. I mean, I don't know. They didn't show a close up of the chains. Maybe they were teeny tiny. I don't know. But I just like that little like joke between them about how fat Paul was. I was like, that's a funny moment, but no.
So this is what happens when you watch a show with someone who has a degree in religion.
Right. Who overthinks things.
Who overthinks things. Well, I mean, to be fair, like, it's like childbirth scenes in movies and TV shows were ruined for me by my actually going through childbirth, because I'm sitting there going like, this is not how any of this works. Would you stop?
She's not crying enough. Never mind, because she is not throwing up enough.
Well, and the one I'm thinking of in particular was the 2009 Star Trek, where James Kirk is being born as the ship is being attacked.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, so a woman's body, when there is stress, and I think this counts, would say, let's stop the labor for right now, because it would put a pause on it. Like, and so that was the one. So yeah, I get that when you know something about something and they just casually toss something off, you're like, no, I may be overthinking it, but no.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed that moment of like genuine, authentic, like they had a thing. They had a secret that no one else had. Like, I like that because I love dramatic irony.
Yeah.
But no.
Well, and the kind of, even if you don't get along with your sibling, like when you have a shared joke.
Right. About your childhood or about, shared experiences. Yeah. Not that we don't get along, because we always do.
Well, I'm just thinking of like, if you were to be like, gentle braking is the hallmark of good driving. Like, or, so are they actually Canadian? And apologies to those watching. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Bastards. I hate those sons of bitches.
A bitch. I show you what she did.
I'm gonna cut all this. I'm gonna cut all this shit.
I actually think this could be fun. Don't cut it. Let them wonder.
And so braking is the hallmark of good driving. Oh man.
So yeah, I mean, there's that is like, there's something so endearing about that when you see people who have known each other forever, whether it's siblings or not. I mean, it's usually siblings, just because who else are you going to know forever? Right. It's so endearing and funny, even if you're not in on the joke, which is why I think you shouldn't cut. So do you think we overthunk it enough?
Probably for today.
Okay.
All right. See you next time, y'all.
See you next time.